everyone in.
Okay, welcome to the Garden Hour with MU Extension. Today we have some awesome topics for you. My name is Donna Oftenberg. I am located down by Cape Girardeau in the southeast corner of the state. And today we are having lots and lots of rain. Just I dread having to go out in it, but hopefully things will change around the next couple of days. So let me get the map up. I hope all of you are staying dry. So here's the map. Take a look at it and find your local horticulture specialist with extension. We do have some openings, so if you're in an area that has an opening, just look to that next name, and that's who you will contact. So anyhow, we look forward to hearing from all of you. So today's presenters include Jennifer Schutter, Justin K, Debi Kelly, Katie Kamler, myself, Kelly, McGowan, Tamra Reall, and Manoj Chetri. And we have some awesome topics, like I said. And Kelly has changed her name to Ask Your Questions Here. So if at any time you have a question, just go down to the chat and pull up the person named Ask Your Questions Here and just text her. And make sure to leave your email address with her, just in case we don't have enough time. We can get back to you at a later date. So at this point, I am going to turn it over to Jennifer, your moderator, and so we can get going.
All right, thank you, Donna. The first thing we're going to do is talk about some survey results. And some of you may have taken the survey regarding this garden hour, and Tamra is going to present those to us.
All right, I just need a moment. Hold on. And to have this up, and you know how it is. Beginning of the year, you'd think that we'd have all of this done. Okay. And oh, you can't see it yet, can you?
No, I can't see it on my end.
Okay, let me try again. All right, you should be able to see it now. Is that?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. All right, so here are the results. We are so glad that so many people participated in these results. It really helps us to be able to understand how much value this program is to you guys. We have a lot of fun putting it together, but we want it to be good for you. So thank you to all those who participated in it, and we just wanted to share some of the results with you. All right, so we had 73 responses, and you can see on the screen, it's a lot of words there. But you can see that we had people who participated in many of our programs, the Extension Master Gardeners, Master Naturalists, Master Pollinator Stewards, educators. We have a lot of different people from a lot of different areas who are participating. You can also see some of the demographics, retired, working part-time. We have, males, females, we have a lot of different parts. I just wanted to include that so you could see where we are. All right, we asked some basic questions like, how much did you learn? Or did you agree that you learned something? And almost 100% said strongly agreed. So 98.6% said that they strongly agreed or agreed that they had learned a lot about gardening on this. And that's what we want to hear. We also asked why you came, and we did this so that we know, we provide a lot of different topics, and we want to know what it is you're interested in. So people were saying that they were interested in, just learning, or vegetables, insects, fruits, integrated pest management, the weather report, having their questions answered, all of our different topics. So that's really good. Participants are learning about this through our various programming, through word of mouth, and through our social media. So that's really good. We're going to try to make this more available to people throughout the state of Missouri this year. And so this was helpful for us to know where people are learning about it. And so where we can also start advertising or marketing elsewhere. And if you have any ideas, we would love to hear from you, any connections that you have if you'd like to share the program. We did ask about if you are aware or if you are gardening. 94% of our participants had a garden. That does mean that 6% didn't, so that's surprising. We asked what sizes of gardens you have. Most of the gardens were between 100 and 1,000 square feet. Some people had larger ones, and our participants are active gardeners, and they are growing a lot of food. And we did include a question about the value of the produce, because we're trying to increase the economic value of education or programming in the state of Missouri. And so this is going to be helpful for us to know, we can actually put an economic data point on these questions. So thank you again for taking the time to estimate how much you are growing. And again, and spending. So for gardening, we had $41,000 from our 67 participants that answered that question. We also asked about how many of you are testing your soil, and I was so thrilled to find that 47% of our participants had tested their garden soil in the last 2 to 3 years. One of these days, we'll have it up to 100% or, close. That'd be great. If you haven't tested your soil in the last 2 to 3 years, please do. All right, on the next question, we asked specifically about a lawn. Many of our participants have a lawn that they're caring for. And again, we asked how much had been spent on it, and that was $17,000. And 20% of our lawn growers have tested their soil. So keep testing that soil too. It's good to know what you need to put into your soil, or even sometimes what you should not be adding to your soil. All right, this is really small. And I realize that, but I just put this here because we got some really good comments. We asked, what are some other regular segments that you might be interested in having? So we typically had a weather report, the friend or foe, horticulture terminology. We don't necessarily have those every single time, but they're pretty regularly put into our program. And so some of the things that people have asked for more information, pruning and container gardening, stories from other gardeners, more on natives. So there's a lot of information that we have from here, and we will use this information to draw from to create additional programming for you. This again has a lot of little details, but I just wanted you to see that we really are taking everything that you gave us into consideration. So this was one of my favorite questions to ask and to receive results from. Something you are doing differently because of what you learned in the Garden Hour with MU Extension. And we had some great results. We see that you guys are mulching and composting more. You are using better IPM management strategies, things like that. You're checking the pH of your soil. You're paying attention to the things that are being said. So thank you so much for taking this information and using that in your garden so that you are more productive and that we're also more environmentally sustainable. All right, just a couple more notes. That's it. We had 4% of participants have submitted an inquiry or sample to the Plant Diagnostic Clinic. Please know that this is a resource for you. If you have questions about if you have a disease, I just got a question this morning about something's wrong with my evergreens, and honestly, I am not the best person for that, but I can send you to the Plant Diagnostic Center so that they can find out a definitive reason what is going on with your plants. So sometimes that is the best thing to do. And then finally, the final slide, we ask about your IPM, and we just want to know, how are you doing it? And so we can also track that over time. And it looks like most of you are using IPM strategies, integrated pest management. You are monitoring regularly and taking action when necessary, and using the least toxic method with effective results. You hear us say that all the time when we're talking about anything that, if you need to do a pesticide, to make sure that you're using that least toxic method with effective results, and monitoring all the time so that you can stay on top of what needs to be done. Anyway, those were our results for this year. We will do another survey next year, or at the end of this year, sorry. And again, we really appreciate you taking the time to do that. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing those results. It's important to know what you guys think and how we can improve the garden hours. So great results, Tamra. So thanks for presenting those. Moving on, our next topic is pruning ornamental shrubs, and Kelly is going to tell us about that.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, let me get it in presenter mode here and we will get going. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about pruning ornamental shrubs. Okay, this is a good time to do it. With the exception of our evergreen ornamental shrubs, our other shrubs have typically lost their leaves at this time of the year. You can really see the structure of your shrubs, so it's a good time to do some pruning this time of the year. Well, let's see here. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go. Okay, so the first few shrubs that I am going to talk about, I will put a little disclaimer in here that these are not shrubs that we recommend for the home landscape, okay? These are shrubs that have been planted for years in home landscapes. And because of that, we have found a lot of problems with them, but we still get questions about them as well. So I am going to go through 2 or 3 of these common shrubs and give you a little bit of pointers on how to prune them, but I'm also going to give you some recommendations if you want to replace some of these shrubs with something else, specifically some of our native shrubs. So the first one that I want to talk about is burning bush. So really, this doesn't need a lot of pruning. You basically want to prune out anything that's dead, diseased, broken, rubbing. This is the time of the year when you want to prune. You can use electric hedge pruners on these to make fast work of it. And basically, you don't want to prune off any more than 1/3 of the new growth. While you're pruning your burning bush, be on the lookout for this. This is called euonymus scale. This is a very common insect pest issue on burning bush and other types of euonymus. This is what it looks like. It just looks like little white lines all over the leaves, all over the branches. So be on the lookout for this. And we're actually going to talk about this here in a moment, how to treat this. But while you're pruning, it's a good time to look for these types of things. Yews are another very common landscape shrub. And again, you want to prune these in late winter or early spring. They will re-sprout on bare wood, but it can take a while. So don't trim off any more than 1/3 of the entire shrub at one time. Try not to get down to the woody part of the plant. It can look kind of unsightly and take a while to get new growth on that woody part. Again, hedge trimmers work well on this. Now, just a disclaimer about yews is they are toxic to livestock. So if you have cattle, don't throw your cuttings over the fence for your cattle to eat because they are toxic. Boxwood, again, this is the time of the year that you want to prune boxwood. Boxwood, again, will re-sprout on bare wood, just like the yews, but it may take a while. So don't prune off any more than 1/3 of the entire shrub at one time. And electric hedge trimmers work well for this also. Bagworms, again, while you're pruning, be on the lookout for some of these issues. Bagworms, are going to be present. This is what they look like. You want to make sure that you're removing them from anything that you're pruning, and don't just throw them on the ground, because there is live critters in there that will start to reproduce as the weather warms up. So pick these things off, put them in a bag, burn it. You don't want these to spread to some of your other plants. Nandina, I'm not even going to tell you how to prune Nandina. I'm just going to recommend that you rip it out of the ground. And the reason is because this once popular landscape shrub has now become incredibly invasive. It's on the invasive plant list in Arkansas. I don't think it is in Missouri yet, but it's probably coming. And the reason why is because these little berries here are eaten by birds. Birds fly to woodland areas, poop out the seeds, and then you've got Nandina growing everywhere in a forest. So I highly, highly recommend not to plant these and to consider replacing this with something else. And then this is always a little graphic I like to show when I'm talking about landscape shrubs. Styles change when it comes to our landscape plants, and we are certainly seeing this in Missouri as well. The ones that I just talked about, those were very, very common 30 years ago, and we're seeing a shift to more native type shrubs, more insect and pollinator friendly type shrubs. So don't be afraid to try some new things. You don't have to keep the same old shrubs in front of your house. Try some new things. There's a lot of beautiful native shrubs that have beautiful flowers and berries. Here's a list of just a few of those. So I would encourage you to consider trying some of these new things to replace some of those outdated shrubs. Okay, so I also want to talk a little bit about pruning roses. I get lots of questions on pruning roses. While roses are not a native plant, they can be fairly well behaved in the landscape. Okay, so the first is knockout roses. And of course, these are the big, huge shrub type roses. They are pretty tough, so it's hard to mess up pruning knockout roses. You want to prune in late winter or early spring, kind of like what we've been talking about. Prune out any dead, diseased, rubbing or crossing, broken branches. Prune off about a half of last year's growth. And also the good thing about knockout roses is that they can continually be pruned throughout the growing season. So if you have a knockout rose that's getting very large, getting out of control, don't be afraid to prune it in the summer. It will be just fine. Hybrid tea roses, these are one of my all-time favorites. Many, many, many years ago, before I worked for Extension, I worked for a lady who grew hybrid tea roses. She showed roses at shows. She was very particular about the care of roses. My family has put in the rose garden here at the Springfield Botanical Gardens. So I have a long history with roses. I love roses. But when pruning hybrid tea roses, you want to be a little more careful than you would be with the knockout roses, okay? The main thing that I want to mention here is, in addition to removing any branches that are dead, diseased, rubbing, anything like that, again, you want to remove about half of last year's growth. And the ideal time to do this with hybrid tea roses is in late February or early March. Hybrid tea roses will often start to put out new buds in late winter. And when those new buds are just starting to form, that is the best time to prune these types of roses. And so when you start to remove half of last year's growth, and right here we can see this picture of this pruning cut, you want to prune just above a new node. So we can see this node right here. And you want to cut just above that at a slanted angle. The plant can heal itself like that, and this new bud will start to put on new growth. Another thing that I want to mention with the hybrid tea roses is that most roses that you buy are grafted. And so you can see here in this diagram, we have a diagram of the graft union, and that's where the rootstock meets the scion part of the plant. And the scion part is the part that has been grafted on to produce the beautiful colored roses that you desire when you buy a rose plant. Often what we see happens is that the grafted part of the plant will die out after a while, and the only thing that's left is the rootstock of that plant. And the rootstock will actually produce canes that produce flowers. And when that happens, this is what they look like. You'll get this red rose here with the yellow centers. And when that happens, that means that the rootstock has been resprouting, and you'll need to prune out those sprouts, because eventually those rootstock sprouts can overtake the grafted part of the plant and kill out anything that's left. So keep a close eye on that rootstock and prune out any of those root suckers. Also, while you're pruning roses, be aware that rose rosette virus is a very common viral issue with roses, and you can tell you have it if your branches, your canes on your rose plants are just covered with hundreds and hundreds of close together thorns. You know, roses have thorns anyway, but when you see thorns that look like this, that's a classic sign of rose rosette virus. And then another thing that you can look for is this, what we call witch's broom. And witch's broom is just an odd area of growth on your rose bush that is very compact and lots of shoots trying to come out of one area. Unfortunately, there's no cure for rose rosette virus, and it can spread to other plants or other roses. So the recommendation is to remove those roses from your yard so that it won't spread to your other roses. Okay, another question that we get a lot, or another thing that we get a lot of questions on is pruning crepe myrtles. Okay, pruning crepe myrtles. The main advice that I'll give you on pruning crepe myrtles is do not do this. Okay, I see a lot of people do this. They get overzealous about pruning crepe myrtles, and they just basically cut off everything. And that's not what we want to do. Crepe myrtles bloom on new growth. So if you get overzealous about pruning, you're going to be cutting out wood that's going to produce your blooms. Another thing that I'll say about crepe myrtles is that, at least here in southern Missouri, they're one of the latest shrubs to start to bud out in the spring. So often we will see all of our other flowering shrubs start to produce leaves, start to bud out, but the crepe myrtle still looks dormant. And a lot of people think that the plant is dead when it's not. It just takes it a while to come out of dormancy and start producing. And so here's a picture of a crepe myrtle right outside of my office window. I took this just a few minutes ago. And basically, we don't do a lot of pruning with our crepe myrtles here at the Botanical Center. What we will do with a plant like this is we're going to cut off any of last year's seed heads, and you can see them here at the top of the plant. These are going to be last year's blooms that have produced seeds, and we're just going to come in here. We're going to cut off these seed heads. We're going to remove, kind of like we've said with some of these other shrubs, we're going to remove anything that is broken, is rubbing, crossing, just kind of clean up the inside of the plant a little bit. We're basically going to leave it intact as it is, and it'll be just fine. So I think that is all I have, Jennifer.
All right, good information, Kelly. Our next topic is now on pruning fruit trees, and Katie is going to tell us about pruning them.
All right, let me get my screen shared. All right, can you see it?
Yes.
All right. This is going to be very basic. This is not the end all be all of all the fruit tree pruning, but some basics. So we have two basic types of pruning. We have an open center pruning, and we use that for peaches and nectarines and Japanese plums. And then we also have a center leader system, and this is seen in apples, pears, apricots, cherries, and European plums. So apples and pears, those are some of the most common that are grown in home gardens. These have a center leader training system. So as you can see in the picture on the right, that has that center leader going up that center and making that strong central trunk. Then we have what we call scaffolding branches. So we want 4 to 9 of those going off the sides, and we want those, as we call them, scaffolds, spaced vertically and around that center leader. And then after we get that structure established, it doesn't take much annual pruning when they are mature. Some things to think about are keeping good airflow and strong branches, because when we have a fruit load on that tree, we want those branches to be able to support that fruit. So here's an example of a small tree that you would purchase, and this is how we think about pruning. So we have on the top, we have a correct way. We've picked a center leader. Sometimes it's not obvious. We pick that center leader, and then we're starting some of those scaffolding branches. And the year later, you see more forming, and we've made a nice scaffolds out where there's good airflow through there. If we didn't do that and we just let 3 grow up, there's no obvious center leader here really, and that just bunches up all those branches. Those scaffolds are all coming out at the same spot, and you can see that this one doesn't have that openness for good air and light movement to help dry that out and help prevent disease problems. Espaliered, if I say that anywhere remotely correctly, is another popular one for home gardeners. So it's growing against a wall or on a fence or some type of support, taking up less space in some cases, or using space efficiently. This is a completely different pruning system, and takes some different work, and in some cases specific varieties lend themselves more to this type of pruning. Peaches, another common home fruit tree. These have the open center. So no center leader. You can see in this picture, those scaffold limbs are connected in a short space on the trunk. So there's nothing going up the center. These are going out to the side. Typically 3, 4, or 5 scaffolding limbs worked from that open center. And typically these need more heavily annual pruning when they are mature. And you also want to make sure you keep that open center. So branches, like you can still see this, the pruning in this picture isn't complete because they still have branches headed toward that center. A good rule of thumb is soft fruits like peaches. We want that open center for more air movement to help keep them dry and help prevent disease problems. So at the start in that first dormant season, if your peach has a center leader still when you purchase it, this is probably the hardest cut for anybody to make, is cutting most of that new tree off. And you can see that has been done here to encourage those side scaffolds and get that structure started. Once again, remove any interior shoots on the trunk that are below those scaffolds, and continue that shape and get that nice base shape. Pruning those bearing trees, once they get bigger, we want to remove any branches growing downward or upward, remove broken or diseased wood, thin or remove branches in the center of the tree to maintain that open center. For any maintenance pruning, we want to get rid of anything that is diseased, broken, crossing, that might rub on each other, or weak growth. Any of that is what we want to remove every year. And there's lots more to it. Some of it is dependent on type, but this is just the basics of pruning apples and peaches. And remember, happy pruning, and please learn from this guy and don't do it like him. Any questions?
All right, thank you, Katie. And now we're going to talk about applying dormant sprays with Manoj.
All right, another day, another topic. Glad to be here. So if you are wondering, after all the pruning and training you've done, what do you need to spray or apply the products to take care of disease and insects issues on the trees and shrubs and fruit trees, then we're going to talk here briefly about dormant horticulture spray. So when we say dormant spray, this is basically referring to the timing of the spray. Since we apply this in dormant period, and therefore the name dormant spray. So this can be fungicides or insecticides, both. So when we say fungicides, these are not like synthetic fungicides. These are more of botanical or organic product, I would say. For example, your lime sulfur, your borax mixture, which are more copper-based, lime-based products. And in insecticides, we have horticulture oil. There are different levels of horticulture oil, I would say. So on the left-hand side, we see this dormant spray. This is actually the true dormant oil. This is high or heavy mineral-based oil, not very much refined, based on petroleum products, or some of them can be based on vegetable products like soybean or cottonseed. On the right-hand side, when we see this all-season horticulture oil, or someone also refer them as summer oil. These are very finely refined, lightweight mineral oils, so they are more safer to your trees and plants. These all are organic based products, of course, and you can be used in both organic and conventional farming. They have already this emulsifier or surfactant mixed in on the product, so you can use it as a solution mixed with the water when you are spraying. You don't have to use any other products, so ready to go product basically. These are contact fungicides and insecticides, okay? So they are not systemic, meaning they don't move within the plants. So the idea here is you have to make a good uniform coverage on your trees and plants to get these insects and fungus under control, because these products are actually penetrating the cuticle layer of your insects or fungus, and they are just blocking that openings or pores and preventing the exchange of gases and suffocating these insects and fungus to death. So this all acts by smothering or preventing the oxygen exchange. Now, why do we care about dormant spray, or why do we need this actually? So first of all, this is a preventive measures. We are just playing defense here against all these insects and fungus. We are staying ahead of the curve before they really start a big problem in the springtime. We are taking good care of them by using those dormant spray. It kills a number of insects. You just name it. The most common ones are aphids, scales, and mealybugs. And these bugs, they are very hard to control once they start laying eggs, and they just exponentially grow. So using those dormant spray early in the season, I mean in the winter time before the season starts, is a very good way and cost-effective way to get under control. Many of these fruit disease like apple scab, powdery mildew, your anthracnose, your peach leaf gall, black rot, these kind of disease are also managed by using these dormant fungicides. Another important thing is there is no resistant issue. So when we talk about these insecticides and fungicides, there is always this issue of when we talk about synthetic products, there's issue of developing resistance by pathogens, by fungus pathogens, bacterial, or even by insects. So with these contact products, we are not have to worry about this resistant development. which is a good thing. Eco-friendly, right? These are very safe products to use. Environmental friendly, safe to wildlife, birds, pets, and also there is no issue with this pollinator toxicity because we are spraying all these things in the winter time, and therefore there's no pollinator toxicity happening at that time. You can also mix these products with other insecticides and fungicides together, and they go well if you want to target multiple things. Now the question is, when and how to apply this product, right? The ideal temperature is, of course, between 40 and 70. We do not, so this product should not be applied freezing temperature like today or the next week. This is not an ideal time. A week before was an ideal time of, so once things starts warming up a little bit and maybe late January or February, if there is a warm day, like 50 degrees, 40 degrees, then you can go ahead and do this dormant spray. But we also always have to look for the winds. In a windy day, maybe more than 5 mph wind speed, that will be too much wind for this spray to stay on the plant surface, and they will quickly dry out. So not a very good weather conditions to work on. We spray those when plants go dormant, anytime after November, basically, and then before bud starts to break down, right? If we so this has to be done before greening of the bud. And typically, if you're a homeowner, you have just 1 or 2 ornamental bushes or just few trees, then once a year is a good way. But if you have severe problems, then maybe twice a year, New Year's Day and Valentine's Day, just separating 6 weeks apart, that will be a good target. And then also we can add up this follow-up spray on Thanksgiving. Once your foliage starts to drop and plants start to go to dormancy, then you can also add that fall spray schedule as a follow-up if you have severe infestation. Otherwise, just once or twice a week in the wintertime is good to go. You always use a good sprayer which has good agitation capacity. It depends on the type of the job you are doing, what kind of sprayer you want to use, but make sure you use PPE. Even though it's a botanical or organic products, you have to use your PPE. Just follow the label. Basically use gloves and eye protections. So there are some restrictions to these products. In the summertime, we don't use this product as much as possible because it's very hard to find a day with lower than 90 degree Fahrenheit air temperature. At that temperature or above, this product will be too much toxic to your plants and it will just do more damage. Also, when your plants are suffering from drought and heat stress or any kind of disease stress, we do not recommend using those products. Again, I mentioned about this true dormant oil and just all season horticulture oil. These are 2 different things. Your true dormant oil are like heavyweight mineral oil, less refined, and they will be toxic to a lot of trees and plants. Okay, for example, your evergreens, beech, fir, maples. So you have to always read the label and see if that trees or plants that you want to spray on is listed on the label or not. If it's not listed, do not spray those products. Another thing to keep in mind is if you are using sulfur-containing fungicides, for example, Captain, to take control of these fungus problems, then you may have to wait at least 30 days before you use this horticulture oil. Okay, just follow the label. It says all in the label. But for example, here this is the peach leaf gall disease, right? This happens early in the springtime in nectarines and peaches caused by fungus Staphyna. So if you want to get control of this, the preventive measures, the best options here, using this copper-based fungicides in the winter time, in the dormant time, will be your best strategy to tackle this kind of disease. So that will be all from my side. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Manoj. And now we're going to move on to seed germination test. And Donna is going to talk about that.
Okay, so I myself, I love seed starting. It's one of my favorite things of horticulture. But one thing I have a bad habit about is holding seed over from year to year to year. To me, it's hard to get rid of that packet that you might only have 10 seeds in, or I don't like throwing anything away. So I always try to keep things. Well, if you're one of those gardeners that try to keep seeds from year to year, then seed germination testing would probably be a good thing. If you're constantly refreshing your seeds from year to year, it's not such a big thing. So just keep that in mind. So if you want to start testing your seeds, it's a great time to do it in January. Some of the supplies that you will need is paper towels, containers or baggies, pencils or markers to label, tags that you can either put in the bags or you can put a piece of tape on your bag and write on it, spray bottle or some way of moistening the paper towel, the seeds that you want to test, and tweezers if they're really small seeds. Like I said, you want to test regularly, usually the beginning of the year in January if you have a habit of holding seeds over. And this is to test their germination rate to see if they're still good. Because, I don't know if you've ever been out in the garden and you've sown a bunch of lettuce or spinach and all of a sudden very few come up. Well, usually when seeds age, they lose that germination rate. They lose the ability to take up that water and sprout. Some seeds die quickly. And so all seeds are different. For example, a lot of your tomato seeds you can actually keep for 4 or 5 years, maybe even longer if the conditions are right. Other seeds like impatiens or some of the more common flower ones, you might have to replace your seeds every year to every couple of years. And so just keep that in mind. There are references online that will tell you how long you need to keep the seeds. Now, just keep in mind, best case scenarios, that's keeping them in a cool, dark place or in a refrigerator where it's, it's not collecting dampness, it's not getting overly warm. So just keep that in mind. So the process. So basically you're taking your paper towel and you're laying it out and you're placing 10 seeds on it. Now, I have heard gardeners say, oh no, I put 20 seeds. It doesn't really matter because all you're going to do is come up with a percentage of what those seeds are germinating at. And so my recommendation, keep it simple. You want the math simple. So you take 10 seeds. And then you can either roll those seeds up in a paper towel or you can fold it over. And I got a picture here where we're folding it over and we're placing it into a baggie. Now, I'm also one of those that I really like to recycle things. So I tend to lean more toward a container that I can scrub up and wash up afterwards versus a baggie. But it's up to you how you do it. Either is fine as long as you're being able to moisten that paper towel and keep that moisture in so that germination can occur. Once you have that paper towel in the bag or the container, you're wanting to write that seed variety and the date you sowed it on that tag. Or I take masking tape and I will put the masking tape on my container or bag and write on it. It works just fine. I like also pencil, but since we're only doing this indoors and it's not in the greenhouse, you can use a permanent marker also. So once you get the paper towel in the bag, that's when you're going to moisten that paper towel, either by a spray bottle or you can use a slow trickle on a faucet, but you want it good and moist, or you can even have it wet. You want to seal that bag or the container, and you want to place it into a dark place, warm place where it's going to get nice and warm, and that way your seeds will germinate. And you want to check it every couple of days. A lot of times the cooler season seeds will actually germinate within about 2 or 3 days, whereas the warm season seeds will take about 7 to 10 days. And so you just randomly check it. So these are peas on the right-hand side. We decided to test our peas. And so you can tell that most of them are starting to germinate. If you want to make sure they're all germinating, I would put them back in the bag at this point and let them go a couple more days, because right now you can 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you can count 7 that are germinating. And I imagine those last 3 would germinate too. And so within about 5 days, you can generally tell what's happening, and how many you're going to have to germinate. All right. So just keep in mind that the number of seeds that you have that are germinating is going to reflect that germination rate. So if you have 8 out of 10 that have germinated, then you have 80%. If you have 2 out of 10, then you have 20%. And so if you have a low number, you might consider buying new seed, or you can plant heavier, the number of seeds per square foot. So just a couple different options. Usually when it's 80%, I'm good. I'm going to go ahead and sow like normal. If it shows 50% or 40%, I'm probably going to double the rate that I'm seeding. And then if we get down to 20 or 30%, that's when I'm going to buy new seed. Now, what I say is it's up to you how you proceed with those numbers, because you may be like, you may not be like me, where you might say, oh, 50%, I'm going to order seeds right away. It's up to you ultimately. But when in doubt, just seek out that new seed and you'll be good for the season. And so hopefully with after testing several seeds, maybe you'll get the hang of it, and you can do this every year. Okay, back to you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Donna. And now Debbie's going to talk about soil testing. Debbie, if you're talking, we're not hearing you.
Sorry about that. You would think we would know after all of these years of doing this that we would know how to do this the right way. So, okay. We get back to the top. So instead of just talking about how to do a soil test, I'm going to talk a little bit different with the soil testing concept. We take our soil tests, they come into our office, and then we actually ship them for you to the soil testing lab on our campus. And they have a mission there. They're here to help farmers to use their fertilizers effectively. Fertilizer is an input, and they definitely don't want to spend any money if they don't have to, just like any other business, because a farm is a business. We as a society improve because we're going to make sure that we only use what we need to be put into the soil for our lawns and for our gardens. And then we also use this as a soil database for researchers on campus to know the kinds of soils that are across the state, as well as what those soils might need for fertilization for the different kinds of plants that are out there. No, your specific information isn't being utilized, so don't worry about that. But just learning about the soils, researchers can learn. Then it's also, we ensure there are some public labs that are out there and some private labs, and we do list some of those that may do some of the soil testing of things that we may not do on our campus, and we verify that they are legitimate labs for you. So let's look at this. At our soil testing lab, we have a couple of different things that we can do. So on the left, we have what is considered our regular soil test fertility. We're looking at some of those typical things that we normally are going to be looking at when we're looking at a soil test. All of these right here should be on your soil test results when they come back. In the middle is a listing of special type of testing. I know some folks are like, well, I know the street people are throwing a lot of salt on the street when there's snow and ice and it's getting up into my lawn. Is that a big issue that I need to think about? And really, that's your electrical conductivity, because salt works in that kind of a fashion on our soils. And so that would be the specific testing that we would add to the regular test if that's of interest to you. And then some of the other things they do at our soil testing lab is they look at plant tissue, predominantly for our specialty crops and some of the traditional crops, the corn and soybeans, where they actually take the plant leaves and do some testing for some fine tuning of nutrients. They look at greenhouse soil, soilless growing mediums that might be out there, because remember, soil is sand, silt, and clay. The soilless growing mediums might be perlite, vermiculite, organic matter. No, organic matter is not soil. So it can do those kinds of testing to see the nutrient amount that might be in that particular soilless growing medium, if there is any. They'll test the nutrient value of compost as well as manure, and there are certain types of water testing that they do as well. But we do not do potable water testing or well testing. That's usually done at your county health department. So let's look at the benefits. Mainly for us as gardeners, we're looking at the pH, we're looking at organic matter, then we're looking at the fertilization needs. In the spring, we all in our office get gobs of people who want to do their soil testing, and that's okay to do it in the spring. That's not an issue, but the very best time to do a soil test is going to be very late summer and early fall. One of the reasons for that is that if your pH is off and you need to add either lime or sulfur, it usually takes about 6 months for that full effect of that pH change to occur. So if you do it in the late August and early September, then that gives you your 6-month time span to change that pH so that it's doing well. The soil is got that changed pH to grow your crops in the spring in your gardens and in your flower beds or whatever it is you're trying to work with. For soil sampling, we always want to look at uniform areas versus non-uniform areas. And when people ask about testing for their lawns, and they're like, do I do just one soil test for my entire lawn? I want to know how big the lawn area is. And then do they have issues in a certain area versus other issues? So like the backyard might be growing their lawn, their turf totally differently. It looks different, it grows different. And in the front, it may be beautiful. To me, that indicates that there's something that's a little bit different. So yes, I would want 2 different soil tests for that type of a situation. We usually say to go down about 4 to 6 inches and take it from different areas of whatever that soil test is going to be, if it's for your lawn, if it's for your vegetable garden. If you're doing raised beds, people will ask, do I need to do different soil tests for each individual bed? And I kind of talk with folks a little bit and say, if all the beds are the same age and you've used the same material in those beds at the same time, I'd say, no, you're probably okay doing one soil sample. But if you are doing different types of material in those beds, then you might want to consider doing different soil tests. So when we get soil tests back, this is what's going to be your recommendations that will come back. We get have had over the past couple of years, folks with soil test results where we see the pH is high, phosphorus and potassium is excess or very high, calcium and magnesium might be high. And then we look at the organic matter. We like to see that between a 3 and a 5. So the organic matter here is really, really good. But when we see this, my initial thought is that they're really over fertilizing their garden area or their lawns. And when I talk with them and tell them they don't need to add any fertilizer whatsoever until the next soil test result comes back and says to add, they're like, my plants didn't grow well. It looks like they need fertilizer. But we have to remember that these nutrients of phosphorus and potassium especially are considered macronutrients. We need those in larger amounts. The calcium and magnesium, sodium, sulfur, zinc, all the others that are listed over here are micronutrients where we don't need them in larger quantities in the soil for good plant growth. So what we do know is that if these are high, it may affect some of these micronutrients. So in reality, you don't need to add the fertilizer you think you need to add. You probably need to add something different, some of those micronutrients, if you're a commercial producer. If you're just a gardener, you don't really need to add the micronutrients to the soil. What you really need to do is just wait. It's called time. There is nothing we really can do to add to the soil to lower those very high and excess fertilizers that we're seeing on this soil test. So it's always good to do a soil test to determine if you actually need it, because again, too much of a good thing can also be bad. So we need to look at a soil test to be able to assist you in knowing what could be an issue in growing your fruits, your vegetables, and your ornamental beds. The other soil test, which is this one here, we definitely know the pH is low. This phosphorus is excessively low, in my opinion. Phosphorus is medium. organic matter is low. And so by having this soil test result come back, we can actually help you to fine tune it so that your soil will have what your plants need. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Debbie. And we just have a few minutes left, so we're going to end by letting Justin tell us about some of the courses and different programs that MU Extension has coming up.
Sorry about that. All right, so we try to offer a lot of gardening classes, kind of late winter, early spring. So just wanted to let folks know about a couple of them. I have some flyers shown here for a couple of upcoming classes, and then I have some more that I'll show you on the next slide. But we have the Home Vegetable Gardening Series webinars coming up starting on February 2nd. That's 7 sessions. And then we also have, to the right-hand side, the MU Extension Garden Steward class series. Both of these will be live with recordings offered to folks that miss one of the live classes or can't attend the live classes, but want to get the education out of those things. In addition to those classes, we have a number of other programs you might be interested in. I already mentioned the Garden Steward, but if you're thinking about or currently selling food at the farmer's market, whether that's produce or value added stuff like jams and jellies, that's a really good series. We have another one that's a little more oriented towards growers, but if you or anybody you know is interested in growing vegetables in high tunnels or medium or low tunnels, this is an in-depth series on that topic. We do have in-person Master Gardener class coming up in Arnold that starts just around the corner here. Master Naturalist class in Camdenton, Missouri that starts at the end of January. This is that home gardening webinar series I already mentioned. We have a beginning beekeeping class coming up in Marshfield in February, and then the Missouri Blueberry School, which this one just happens every other year, but that's an in-depth 2-day workshop on growing blueberries, geared a little bit more towards the commercial grower, but really good in-depth information if anybody wants to dive into blueberries. And I think this one has both the classroom and then some farm tours on the second day down in the Springfield area. You can always find all our events. You can just type in MU Extension events into your search engine or this web address. And when you get to that page, we have a ton of classes on stuff besides agriculture. So if you want to look at all the classes, you can just scroll through. But if you do want to select more for the gardening related classes, in the bottom left-hand corner, there's a little filter and you can select agriculture environment and it will narrow it down to all of our agriculture, gardening related classes. Also, if you want to be kept in the loop from your local horticultural specialist about different local classes that might be coming up, we'll show that slide at the end of the presentation with your local horticulture specialist's email address. So feel free to email them and they can get you on a list to keep you informed about different class offerings and local class offerings that might be closer to your area. So lots of good stuff coming up here, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more that happens during the spring, and we have stuff going on throughout the year. So love to have you join at our classes, and I will leave it at that.
All right, thank you, Justin, for that update. And now I will turn it back to Donna to close us out for the day.
Okay. I guess, hold on, let me get that screen up. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we have put a lot of links in the chat. And so if anyone wants to save that chat, they go, they just click on chat and then the chat pops up, and then over to the right, to lower right, there's a ... Click on that ... and it will pop up and you can save the chat from there. A really good way, it saves it to your computer so you keep all those links if you're interested in them. Just keep in mind that this has been recorded and that it can be found on the YouTube page that is labeled MUIPM. And that's over to your left of the screen. And when you go to that site, it will have all the old episodes and all the snippet videos that have been made from these recordings. So it's a great way to get caught up on gardening and learn more, having continuing education, especially for master gardeners. And just check back regularly for new snippets and new recordings. If you wish to ask a question in future garden hours, you will have to go back and re-register and add your question in. Our next two sessions is February 15th and March 15th. So only one during the month in the winter. So this is the page where you would go back and you would ask your question. And there's also an opportunity to include a picture also, which can really help us in deciding what's going on with some of your plants. So I hope everybody stays dry, and thank you for joining us. Especially if you're going outside to work, definitely stay dry, and join us for our next garden hour on March 15th at noon, and enjoy the rest of your day. And here's the state with